My name is Evelyn Martin, and at 68 years old, I came to understand the profound fragility of familial bonds. I reside by myself in a humble home within a tranquil suburban area where my days merge together, marked by simplicity, predictability, and a general lack of excitement. I do not object to it, though. Following the raising of 2 children, dedicating 40 years to my career as an accountant, and witnessing my husband's passing a decade prior, I have learned to appreciate the solace of a routine. However, the holidays, particularly Christmas, consistently infused a unique energy into my existence. It represented the single occasion each year when I anticipated my son Eric and his wife Beth visiting for a family celebration. This year, though, a different feeling was present. It was almost as if the very atmosphere was filled with a silent strain. The evening commenced like any other. I had dedicated the day to cooking the meal, preparing the table, and organizing the beverages, exerting my best effort to ensure everything was flawless. The fragrance of roasted turkey permeated the house, and I could discern the soft drone of holiday music playing in the background. As I concluded the placement of desserts on the counter, Eric and Beth showed up, early as was their custom, and I welcomed them with a heartfelt embrace. Eric, my sole son, was the center of my world. He had consistently been a wonderful boy, although through the passing years, I observed he was becoming increasingly withdrawn, his visits briefer, and his behavior more preoccupied. Beth, conversely, was consistently courteous, if perhaps a touch domineering on occasion, but I had not given it significant thought. They both infused the house with vitality, and for an instant I forgot the persistent sense of unease that had been subtly growing. The dinner proceeded as intended, for the most part. Eric took his seat at the table's head, with Beth next to him, and I presented the food with a smile. The talk was initially light, centering on work, our recent activities, and the standard holiday niceties. It had a comfortable, recognizable quality, despite the slight tension that lingered. But then, unexpectedly, the words that would alter the course of everything were uttered. As the evening progressed, we remained at the table, leisurely consuming our food. That is when it occurred. Eric glanced at me, his gaze frigid, and with an acidity in his tone I had never previously encountered, he whispered, "I wish you had never been born." His statement reverberated throughout the space, and in a single moment, all the festive warmth vanished. It felt as though the very air had been pulled from the room, and I sensed every muscle in my form contract. Beth stayed quiet, her eyes falling to her dinner plate as her fingers clutched her wine glass. Eric's expression was emotionless, as though his words held no significance for him, yet they utterly shattered me. I remained seated, stunned, uncertain of how to react. The words seared my chest, and for the first time ever, I felt as if I had no place within my own family. The years of personal sacrifice, the affection, the devotion I had invested in them, it all felt insignificant at that juncture. The meal carried on, but I was no longer present. I was in another place, far removed, ensnared by the crushing burden of my son's declaration. The fractures had at last become visible, and it could no longer be denied. I understood that a change was necessary. I recognized this was the breaking point. The remainder of the evening went by in a haze, as if I were observing another person's life play out. I recall Eric attempting to engage in small talk, but I was unable to muster a reply. How was it possible? How could I act as if all was well after those words? The most painful part was my inability to even ask why he had said it. The silence between us was suffocating, like a thick fog from which I could not break free. At last I made my excuses. "I'm feeling tired," I stated, my voice quivering slightly. "I believe I will go to bed early." Eric hardly glanced up from his phone, offering a distracted wave of his hand while murmuring something that might have been a farewell. I was past caring. My heart was empty, and I required solitude. I went to my bedroom, securing the door behind me. I sat on my bed's edge, my hands shaking as I attempted to comprehend what had just transpired. My thoughts kept returning to the moment Eric's words had cut through the atmosphere, the decisiveness in his tone, the sheer coldness. I could hardly draw a breath. I had devoted my life to raising him, investing everything I possessed to ensure he would have a brighter future. I toiled for long hours and gave up my own aspirations for his, and this was my reward, a heartless, unprompted statement that I was not even deserving of the space I took up in his life. That night, sleep was impossible. I tossed and turned, with thoughts swirling in my head repeatedly. Was he upset about something? Was this related to money? Did he harbor resentment for all I had provided for him? I attempted to convince myself it was a fleeting moment of anger, that he perhaps didn't mean it. Yet deep down, I was aware of the truth. The words had been intentional, even calculated. The morning arrived, and with it came a chilling sense of clarity. I knew I was unable to ignore this. I was compelled to take action. The betrayal I had experienced the previous night was not merely about those words. It was about years of emotional distance. It was the dawning awareness that regardless of my actions, regardless of my efforts to be there for him, it would never suffice. While I made breakfast, my hands worked automatically. The eggs sizzled in the skillet, and the aroma of coffee filled the kitchen, but I was unable to dispel the numbness within me. I had a choice to make. When Eric and Beth departed that afternoon, I knew with certainty what I planned to do. It was not a choice I arrived at casually, but it was the only one that felt logical. I intended to disinherit him. I was finished being his safety net, done being the person he contacted only when he was in need. I retrieved my old will and reviewed it. It had been some time since I last updated it, but I knew precisely what required alteration. The residence, the savings, everything I had accumulated over my lifetime. It would be donated to charity, to individuals who genuinely appreciate diligence, compassion, and respect. Eric's name was struck through with a decisive stroke. The ink set, and with it, my decision became irreversible. I was unsure if I would see him again, but it did not matter. My own peace of mind was what was important now. I would no longer allow him to determine my value. The telephone call arrived 2 days following the party. My hands quivered as I looked at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. It was Eric. He was calling. I let it ring. I knew what he would be seeking. A reason, a defense, possibly even a mea culpa. But how could I clarify something so self-evident? How could I articulate the years of inattention, the quiet bitterness that had grown beneath his polite facade? I set the phone back on the counter, my thoughts racing. But no, this was not his concern. It was about me. It had to be. The choice I had made, disinheriting him, had been a kind of liberation, a brutal, gut-wrenching liberation. The pressure on my chest had lifted, but there was no happiness in it, just a void I could not manage to fill. I gazed out the window at the deepening twilight. The world beyond was silent and calm, and inside, my home was silent too, overwhelmingly silent. Then, the realization struck me. I could not continue this way. I could not go on living in this house, where each creak of the floorboards served as a memory of all the years spent attempting to keep my family intact. The silence between us was oppressive. I took my coat. It was time to leave for another place, somewhere distant from all that had fractured me. I needed to discover something that would make me feel alive once more. With a final look at the house, I walked out and closed the door behind me. The wind struck my face as I went out into the cold, but it didn't bother me. I felt nothing except for a peculiar, restless energy that was bubbling up inside of me. I had no clue as to my destination, but I was certain I could not remain here. My phone buzzed again. This time I picked up. "Mom?" Eric's voice came through, unsteady and hesitant. "We have to talk." "I'm not returning, Eric," I replied, my voice firm and cool. "I cannot, not after what you said." The stillness on the other end was deafening. Then at last, I heard him. "Mom, please." The entreaty struck me like a blow to the stomach. I wanted to weep, to yell at him, to force him to see, but I did not. "I have already reached my decision," I stated, the words emerging with more strength than I anticipated. "And it is final." The line went silent. I remained there for a moment, the phone still held to my ear. I was unsure if I felt sadness or relief, but what I did know was that I had seized control. At last, for the first time in ages, I felt I was doing something for myself, and not for him. It is strange how abruptly life can pivot. One minute, I was standing outside my residence, my heart thumping with the reverberations of my decision. The next, I was wandering aimlessly down the road, my thoughts still in a whirl from the phone call. It was chilly, but I did not register it. Everything felt detached, as if I were drifting through some peculiar mist, disconnected from my surroundings. And then, as if by design, an event occurred that made everything feel exceptionally real again. A silhouette materialized at the far end of the street, a person I had not encountered in many years. I narrowed my eyes, attempting to identify the individual. It was a man, tall and with broad shoulders, advancing slowly in my direction. As he drew nearer, the recognition hit me like a speeding train. David, my former husband's brother. I had not communicated with David in a very long time. Following my divorce, we had fallen out of touch. My ex-husband's relatives had consistently been aloof, their dealings stemming more from a sense of duty than true warmth. But David had consistently been different, gentle, reserved, and strangely, something of a recluse, much like me. "Evelyn!" His voice sliced through the air, a deep baritone that was still recognizable after all this time. I halted in my path, uncertain of how to proceed. He was near now, so near that I could perceive the concern etched into his features. "David," I was able to say, my voice barely a murmur. "What on earth took place, Ev?" He was now positioned in front of me, his face showing a mix of worry and bewilderment. "I learned about the party. I heard what Eric said. Are you all right?" I felt an urge to retort sharply, to tell him it was none of his concern, but I could not when his eyes were so full of genuine sympathy. "I'm fine," I replied a bit too hastily. "Just needed to get some air." He was not convinced. His gaze softened as he observed me, his eyes studying my face as if he were trying to decipher some concealed message. "I don't think so," he said softly. "But fine, I understand. You prefer not to discuss it. But may I at least accompany you?" I paused for a second, then gave a slight nod. We began to walk together, the quiet drone of the city all around us a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within me. "So," David started, his tone relaxed but cautious, "what is the plan from here? What will you do?" I glanced at him, my heart still laden. "I have no idea. I've already settled on my choice regarding Eric. I am finished. I can't go on pretending it's all fine." David acknowledged this with a nod, his lips forming a firm, thin line. We proceeded for a while in quiet, the gravity of the words suspended between us. "You are not on your own in this, you realize," David at last stated, interrupting the silence. "Should you ever require assistance, I am available." His words struck me more deeply than I had anticipated. In that instant, something within me shifted. I had been so preoccupied with my losses, my son, my family, that I had neglected the fact that there were still people who were concerned for me. David was not a rescuer. He was not going to resolve everything. But for the initial time in a long while, I felt that perhaps, just maybe, I was not unseen. The walk concluded all too quickly, and I was standing before my old home once more, my heart pounding. David looked at me a final time, his expression gentle but resolute. "I will check on you again soon, all right?" he remarked, his voice earnest. I nodded, a small thankful smile appearing on my face. "I'll be okay," I said, though a part of me was not entirely certain. As David departed, I understood something significant. I was not alone, not truly. And that represented the first ray of hope I had experienced in days. It was a week later that I received the call. The house seemed quieter than normal. The solitude had set in, as it invariably did following an emotional upheaval. The walls felt as if they were closing in on me, and even the familiar groan of the floorboards seemed foreign, as though I were residing in another person's home. I had spent the last few days doing precisely what I had vowed to myself. Nothing, just remaining in the quiet and attempting to process the gravity of my choice. I was still grappling with the events of the family party, and Eric's words replayed in my thoughts repeatedly, an echo that refused to diminish. And then, my phone rang. I was not shocked. I had been awaiting this moment, the point when the call would come and I would need to confront the repercussions of disinheriting my son. What I had not anticipated, however, was the identity of the person on the other end of the line. It was Patricia. "Evelyn, my dear, how have you been?" Her voice was excessively sweet, overly refined. I could practically sense her smile, even though I knew she was not smiling. I felt a jolt in my chest, the kind one experiences before entering a room filled with people one would prefer to sidestep. I had no desire to speak with her. I had no desire to hear from her, but I had little alternative. "I am doing well, Patricia," I responded, maintaining a neutral tone while my hands gripped the phone. She did not delay. "Well, I have been thinking of you, Evelyn, and about all that has transpired. I feel we ought to meet. I am convinced there is something we can talk about, something of importance." I stood motionless, a feeling of unease creeping over me. I understood precisely where this was headed. They were after something. "Patricia, I have no interest in any of your ploys. I have made my choice. You do not need to be concerned about me." I attempted to terminate the call, but she would not allow it. "Oh, no, Evelyn. This is not about Eric, or myself, or even the inheritance. This concerns you. You are deserving of more, and we are both aware of it. I have a proposition for you, one that could alter everything." I could sense the tension in my jaw. "What are you referring to?" I inquired, my tone cold, yet curiosity was piqued despite my reluctance. Patricia paused for a moment, then spoke again, her voice lowering to nearly a whisper. "I have been communicating with a few individuals, some highly significant people. We can assist you, Evelyn. We can aid you in protecting your future, your legacy. All that is required is that you trust me. Trust us." The words hit me like a slap. This was not a mere friendly gesture. It was a deliberate proposition. They desired something from me, and I could sense it from a mile away. The question was, what was it? "No," I stated firmly, my hand clenching around the phone. "I do not require your assistance. I have come to terms with my actions. I do not need any of you attempting to resolve matters." But Patricia did not relent. "Evelyn, please listen. If you reconsider, you can guarantee that everything you have accumulated is safeguarded. There are individuals who wish to ensure your well-being. You are not required to face this by yourself. You can possess more than you ever imagined." A nauseating feeling churned in my gut. I could almost picture her leaning in, murmuring these words with a smile, concealing the true intent behind them. She was not offering support. She was presenting a deal, and such deals always have conditions. I was not naive. I knew precisely what their objective was, but I also knew one thing. I could not allow them to get it. "I will never place my trust in you, Patricia," I replied, my voice resolute, "and I will certainly not permit you to manage my future." There was an extended silence on the other end. I could almost perceive the temperature plummeting as Patricia absorbed my words. Then, in a tone dripping with thinly veiled hostility, she said, "Very well, but do remember, Evelyn, some proposals are only made once. Do not claim I failed to warn you." The connection was severed, and I let the phone drop into my lap, my heart pounding. The offer was as insincere as I had anticipated, but what unnerved me was not the threat itself. It was the stark reality that my family, the very people for whom I had given up everything, were now conspiring against me. A line had been established, and I had no intention of crossing it. I leaned back, observing the vacant room around me, and I had a realization. I was finished with being the person who consistently gave. I would no longer be manipulated. It was time to assume control, time to seize what was rightfully mine. I was unprepared for the events that followed. 2 days after my exchange with Patricia, the doorbell chimed. I was not anticipating a visitor. My heart jumped as I approached the door, wondering if it was Eric, finally arriving to face the repercussions of his words. But upon opening it, I froze. Standing before me was a woman I did not know, her expression serene but with a sharpness in her gaze that unsettled me. She was tall, with dark hair tied back in a tidy ponytail, and she was dressed in a simple black suit that exuded professionalism. There was an element about her that seemed almost incongruous. "May I assist you?" I inquired, moving back instinctively to shut the door, but she advanced, her presence authoritative. "I am here representing Patricia, Mrs. Martin," the woman stated, her voice even and firm. "We must discuss the proposition we have extended to you." I frowned, my pulse accelerating. This was not a simple social call. This was something far more strategic. "I have already stated my position," I said forcefully, though my voice quivered slightly. "I desire nothing from Patricia or any of her associates." The woman did not react. Instead, she presented a folder, its contents obscured by a simple manila cover. "This concerns your will, Mrs. Martin. Patricia is not the sole party with an interest in your holdings. We have been observing the developments, and there is a potential collaboration we wish to review with you." A shiver traveled down my spine. "Observing?" I repeated, my mind racing. "What in the world are you referring to?" The woman opened the folder, displaying a set of documents. She located a specific page and pushed it toward me. "This is a copy of your most recent will revision, signed and notarized. We have been monitoring your financial status, your properties, your investments." I felt a knot form in my throat. This was not merely about the money. This was about exerting control. They were attempting to coerce me into something I was not prepared for. "How did you obtain this?" I asked, my voice trembling with a combination of rage and alarm. "This is confidential." Her eyes met mine, cold and businesslike. "You would be astounded by what individuals can discover when they search diligently. We know everything about you, Mrs. Martin. Your residence, your savings, your photography business, everything." I wanted to slam the door in her face, but something held me back. Her words had struck me like a physical blow. They were watching me. They had been observing me all along. "You are attempting to frighten me," I said, trying to maintain my composure, although I felt I was about to collapse. "I will not be intimidated." The woman's lips formed a smile, but it held no warmth. "We are not here to frighten you, Mrs. Martin. We are here to present something that could simplify your life. It is not too late to reconsider. We can still cooperate, but time is running out." The pressure in my chest intensified. I wanted to tell her to leave, to shut the door and never see her again. But the fear gnawing at me indicated this was not something I could dismiss. This was no longer just about money. It was about power, about who held sway over what remained of my life. "I am not interested in your proposal," I said at last, gathering the strength to push her back. "Leave my property." For a second she remained still, but then, without speaking, she stepped back and turned to depart. "We will be in contact, Mrs. Martin. Do not make the error of believing you have an unlimited amount of time." As she walked down the driveway, I stood motionless in the doorway, my mind in turmoil. I slammed the door shut and leaned against it, my breathing shallow and rapid. They were closing in. The walls were moving inward. I did not know how much longer I could resist, but one thing was definite. I would not allow them to triumph. Not now, not ever. That night, sleep was elusive. Every shadow in my room seemed to whisper, and every creak of the house sounded like someone was hiding just outside my door. I could not dispel the notion that Patricia's offer was not just about money or power. There was a darker element at play beneath the surface. I tossed and turned in my bed, my thoughts racing. Why had David appeared? Why had Patricia dispatched that woman to my home? And why on earth did they believe they could manipulate me in this manner? The sound of my phone vibrating on the bedside table pierced through my thoughts. I reached for it, expecting another call from Eric or Patricia, but the name on the screen caused my heart to skip a beat. It was David. I paused for a moment, my thumb hovering over the answer button. A part of me wanted to let it ring. I did not want to involve anyone else, especially after all that had transpired. But another part of me desperately needed answers. I answered. "David." My voice sounded weak and fragile, even to me. "Evelyn," his voice was insistent. "I need to speak with you. Something is happening. I have been investigating, and I believe I've found something you should know." I sat up in bed, my pulse racing. "What do you mean? What did you find?" "There is more to this than you realize," he went on, his voice low. I have been in touch with a few people, and there are details about Patricia and her intentions that you are unaware of. Details that could change everything for you. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. What do you mean? Is this about the will? Not solely the will, Evelyn. There is more. You must be cautious. There is something occurring behind the scenes that could destroy everything. They have been making moves you have not detected. A knot formed in my stomach. This was no longer a family matter. It was something far larger. The power struggle I had dismissed as minor drama had evolved into something perilous, and I was caught in the middle. David, what are you talking about? I asked, my voice trembling now. What are they up to? There is a great deal I cannot discuss over the phone, he said, but I need you to meet me tomorrow. I will clarify everything then. I stared at the phone in my hand, my head spinning. What could David possibly know? Why had he not informed me sooner? And what had Patricia and her associates been doing behind my back? I will meet you, I said before I could reconsider. Where? The same spot we used to visit, he replied. The old diner on Maple Street. I will be there at noon. Do not be late. I hung up, my hands still unsteady. I had no idea what David had discovered, but one thing was certain. This was far from concluded. I got up and paced the room. The walls felt like they were closing in again, but this time I was not sure I could get away. Tomorrow I would have answers, and I was prepared for whatever David had to share. Because if his hints were true, if there were things happening that I did not know about, then everything was about to change. The following day, I found myself seated in the familiar booth of the diner. The aroma of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filled the space, but it did nothing to soothe the turmoil brewing in my chest. I was on edge, more than I wanted to acknowledge. David had not revealed much on the phone, but the urgency in his voice was unmistakable. Something was amiss, and I had to find out what. The diner was peaceful, a rare weekday lull. I glanced at the clock. 11:45 a.m. I had come early, hoping to ready myself for whatever David had found. The thought of confronting more deceit, more falsehoods was daunting, but I had no alternative. This was now larger than me. I had no clue what David had been investigating, but the clues were beginning to align in my mind. Patricia's schemes, the unusual woman who had come to my house, and now David's mysterious warnings. It all pointed toward something far more malevolent. Then, the bell over the entrance chimed. I looked up to see him, David, as composed as ever, walking into the diner as if nothing had changed. But I could detect the tension in his bearing, the way his eyes surveyed the room, as if he were anticipating someone, or something. He settled into the booth opposite me, his expression grave, his eyes avoiding mine before finally meeting my gaze. You were correct, he said, his voice low. This is not just about inheritance. It is about power, control, and you are at the heart of it. I leaned forward, my heart racing. What are you saying? What did you find? David's eyes darted nervously toward the door before he spoke again, lowering his voice further. Patricia has been in communication with some highly influential individuals, people who have been subtly manipulating events from the shadows, and they want to ensure they remain in power. They have been monitoring you, Evelyn, and they have been taking action. A chill went through me. What kind of action? David paused, selecting his words with care. They have been working to make sure you are isolated, that you have no one supporting you. They are aware of the will modification, they know about your business, and they know you are becoming a bit too self-reliant for their comfort. My stomach churned. This was more serious than I had imagined. The reality hit me with force. Patricia was not just trying to manipulate me for financial gain. She and her associates aimed to dominate every aspect of my existence. Why are they doing this? I inquired, my voice barely audible. What is it they want from me? David hesitated, glancing around the diner before leaning in closer. They want to guarantee you are not a danger to their agenda. They require your assets, they require your business, and Evelyn, they require you to remain silent. If you resist, things are going to become unpleasant. They will stop at nothing to achieve their goals. I felt the color drain from my face. The words hung in the air, stifling me. What do you mean, unpleasant? David's expression grew grim. I have been hearing things, Evelyn. They are not hesitant to resort to dirty tactics. They will come after you if you oppose them. I sank back into the booth, the weight of his words settling in. The life I thought I had, my peace, my autonomy, my sense of command, was dissolving. "Why are you assisting me?" I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. "What do you need from me?" David looked at me, his gaze softening. "I am doing this because you are family, Evelyn, and I know you are tougher than they realize. But you must act quickly. They are moving fast, and the longer you delay, the harder it will be to escape their influence." I nodded slowly, the truth of the situation landing like a heavy rock in my stomach. This was not just about money anymore. It was about survival. "You have a choice to make, Evelyn," David went on, his tone urgent. "You can either capitulate to them and live the rest of your life under their thumb, or you can fight. But if you choose to fight, you must be prepared for what follows." I looked out the window where the sun was setting behind the distant buildings. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of something inside me, something I had not experienced in a long time. It was resolve, a drive to fight for my own life, my own future. I turned back to David, my voice steady, my determination firm. "I am not going down without a fight." The subsequent days felt as though they were stretching out before me, an endless path filled with uncertainties. I had made my choice, but now it was time to take action. The decisions I was on the verge of making would either liberate me or completely trap me in a life of subservience to people who viewed me only as an instrument to be used. David's caution echoed constantly in my thoughts. I had to stay one step ahead of Patricia and her manipulative strategies. I had to be intelligent, careful, but most importantly, I needed to be ruthless. I could not permit fear to direct me now. I spent hours conducting research, delving into everything I could uncover about Patricia's partners, the individuals orchestrating her moves. It felt like uncovering the layers of a dense, dark mist that had been enveloping my life. Every clue I pursued only exposed more links. More people implicated in what I was beginning to grasp was a far larger operation than I had ever suspected. This was not just about me or my son. This was about something much more perilous and much more profitable. I was in my living room, my fingers flying across my laptop's keyboard, when the doorbell rang. The sound sliced through the quiet like a blade. My heart skipped, and a cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. I was not expecting company. I rose slowly, cautiously, my mind racing. Could it be Patricia or another person sent by her? My thoughts were cut short by the bell ringing once more. Whoever it was, they were not going to depart without a response. I opened the door to find her, Amanda. Her face was tense, her eyes calculating, and she stood in the entryway holding a large envelope. "Mom," she said, her voice filled with an overly earnest sweetness that made my skin crawl. "I have been trying to contact you. Can we speak?" I did not let her in. Instead, I folded my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "What is it you want, Amanda?" Her smile wavered for a moment, but she quickly composed herself. "We need to resolve this. I know things have not been ideal between us, but what occurred with Eric, this is not you, Mom. This is not how things are supposed to conclude." I arched an eyebrow. "You have no right to tell me how things should conclude after what Eric said to me. I am finished. I do not need your sympathy." Amanda moved closer, her voice dropping. "This is not sympathy. This is about family, about doing the right thing. We want to mend things between us." I tensed. "Who is we?" She held up the envelope, a slight gleam of something I could not identify in her eyes. "It is from Patricia. She is trying to help you, Mom. She truly is. All of this, the disinheritance, the family strife, it can all be resolved. You do not need to isolate yourself. You do not need to live by yourself like this. We want to help." I looked at her, the envelope hanging from her hand like a menace. "Help me with what precisely? What scheme are you involved in now, Amanda?" Her eyes hardened for a split second before her smile returned. "It is not a scheme, Mom. It is a second opportunity. Patricia wishes to offer you a position in her circle. You do not have to be alone. You can have a future. You can possess everything you have ever desired. But you must return to us. Return to the family." A wave of rage rose in me, but I suppressed it. I would not give her the pleasure of seeing me break. "And what does this come with, Amanda? What do you want from me in return for this help?" She hesitated, and in that moment, I saw the true Amanda, the one who had always been more concerned with what she could acquire than with any genuine bond. "It is not about what we want from you, Mom. It is about giving you what you are owed." My stomach churned. Everything she uttered, every single word, was a fabrication. I snatched the envelope from her hand and ripped it open. Inside were papers, more legal documents, more agreements. I scanned them quickly, my pulse accelerating. There it was, the ultimatum. If I took their offer, I would be under their dominion. All of my assets, my house, my business, my investments, would be transferred to Patricia and her associates. They were offering me a future, but it came with a cost. My autonomy, my dignity, my power to make my own decisions. I looked up at Amanda, my eyes steely. "I will never sign this." Her smile faltered again, but only for an instant. "You will regret this, Mom. This is your final chance. You do not realize how dangerous it is out there. You believe you can manage this on your own, but you cannot. Patricia is not someone you want for an enemy." I slammed the envelope onto the counter, my voice trembling with fury. "Get out of my house, Amanda. I am done." She remained there for a moment, looking at me with a mix of pity and anger, before turning and departing without another word. I stood there as the silence descended upon me. The betrayal was deeper than I had imagined, and now it was not just about Eric or Patricia. It was about my entire family. But one thing was clear: I was not going to let them win. The weeks that followed felt like I was in the eye of a hurricane, calm on the surface, but with turmoil swirling all around me. I knew they were observing, waiting for me to make a mistake, to break, but I would not provide them with that satisfaction. I was finished being their pawn. I dedicated my days to preparing for what was imminent. I had to be strategic. Every action I took, every word I uttered, had to be deliberate. There could be no errors. Patricia and Amanda had misjudged me, and now it was time to reverse the dynamic. But there was still one more thing I needed to do before I could execute my final move. David had been my support system, the only individual who had stood by me when the rest of the world seemed to have turned against me. But even David could not shield me from everything. I had to go to the core of this matter, to the origin, and face it directly. I resolved to visit Patricia in person. It was time to conclude this, once and for all. I drove into the parking lot of the opulent building that held Patricia's office. The glass facade shone in the afternoon light, a stark contrast to the darkness fermenting within. The instant I stepped out of my car, I felt the gravity of my choice settle in my chest. This was not merely a confrontation, it was the final scene in a long, agonizing struggle for my life. The receptionist at the front desk greeted me with a cool smile as I requested to see Patricia. She said little, simply pointing toward the elevator as if she already understood my purpose. I rode the elevator upward, each floor passing with a soft chime that seemed to resonate in my mind. When the doors finally slid open on the highest floor, I entered her office without a pause. Patricia was seated behind her enormous desk, the same smooth smile on her lips, but there was a different quality in her eyes. She knew why I was there. She had to. "Evelyn, darling," she said, her tone saccharine. "It is so wonderful to see you. I am so pleased you came." I did not take a seat. I stood, my posture erect, my eyes fixed on hers. "Stop the charade, Patricia. I am finished with the games. I am not signing your damn documents. I will not be a part of your scheme." Her smile did not waver. "Evelyn, you are being irrational. This is the best option for you. We are offering you security, stability. You do not have to live in this manner any longer." I leaned forward, my voice cold. "No, you want dominance. You want my life, but I am not surrendering it to you. I am not relinquishing everything I have built just because you believe you can purchase me." She leaned back in her chair, her fingers forming a steeple in front of her. "You do not see it, do you? You have no option. This is not about what you desire. It is about what we desire. And you will regret not accepting our terms. You will see, you cannot oppose us indefinitely. I felt a jolt of rage surge through me. I am not afraid of you, and I am not afraid of what you will do. You believe you can control me? You are mistaken. She stood, her heels clicking on the floor as she slowly walked toward me, her gaze never breaking from mine. We are beyond the point of discussion now, Evelyn. You are making a grave error, and I am afraid there is no going back. My heart was hammering, but I did not retreat. This was it, the moment I had been readying myself for. I am done with you. Done with all of you? Patricia's face showed a flicker of something I could not quite discern. Anger, frustration, but she quickly concealed it with that same polished smile. Very well then, Evelyn. If you insist on this course of action, I will have to ensure you regret it. You are not the only one who holds power here. She turned to her desk, lifting the phone with a slow, measured motion. I will make sure you comprehend the repercussions of your choice. I am not through with you yet. Before I could speak again, she was already dialing. But I was no longer afraid. I had made my decision. This was the final time I would permit anyone to control me. As I turned to depart, I heard her voice, sharp and conclusive. This is not finished, Evelyn. You will see. I walked out of that office, the weight of her words hanging in the air behind me. But this time, they did not feel like a threat. They felt like the last gasp of someone who was losing control. I knew what was to come, but I was prepared to fight, prepared to win. No more hiding, no more running. This was my life, and I was taking it back.